On this day in 1091, a young priest in rural Normandy had a horrifying encounter. A parade of the dead. A wild hunt. He was given a harrowing warning and he barely escaped his life. G'day. Chris the Medievalist here. You might not know this, but today, January the 1st, is the anniversary of one of the most famous medieval European ghost stories, the Wild Hunt narrative recorded by Orderic Vitalis, told to him by Walchelin the priest, who witnessed the event. The story goes that, late in the evening of January the 1st, in the year 1091, a priest by the name of Walchelin encountered a terrifying procession of the dead in a remote corner of his parish. Walchelin was a priest in the town of Bonneville, in what is now France. That night, while attending to one of his parishioners, he heard what sounded like a large army moving in the night. Walchelin thought that they were the soldiers of Robert of Bellem, a notorious Norman count, renowned for his vindictiveness and his cruelty. Now, Walchelin was a strapping young lad, apparently, and for a moment he thought of standing his ground. He did think better of it, and he decided to seek safety in a nearby medlar grove. But before he could reach the trees, his path was blocked by a fearsome giant. The giant tells Walchelin that he must wait and bear witness to what was about to unfold. Walchelin must witness the procession of 5 groups of the departed through the cold winter night. Firstly, a group of peasants passed by. These peasants are described by Orderic as plunderers. They are guilty of looting battlefields, and, in medieval Normandy, there were plenty of those. Walchelin recognised a bunch of these peasants as his former parishioners, which gave the young priest a bit of food for thought. The peasants are followed by a group of people who have, for an 11th century monk like Orderic at least, unusual bodies. The giant joins this group. The rest of the group is made up of dwarfs who carry coffins, 2 Ethiopians, and a demon torturing a man who is known as the killer of a priest. The third group to pass Walchelin is made up of women, and Orderic tells us that they're guilty of the sins of the flesh, and he relishes describing their schmectralized punishments. Walchelin again recognised many of them, and Orderic wrote that there were a number of empty carriages and horses amongst them, waiting for women who were still living. The fourth group is made up of monks and priests, and again, Walchelin recognises many of them, and they beg and they plead with him for his prayers to alleviate their suffering in the afterlife. This group contains a number of individuals who are quite well regarded in other texts from that time, which leads us to some pretty interesting conclusions. Finally, a group of knights and noblemen arrive, and they too beg for intercession and attempt to explain themselves and their lives to the young priest. As with the monks and the priests that passed by earlier, a number of these individuals are named and were of high status in Norman society. Walchelin recognises that his story is pretty unbelievable without some sort of proof, and so he tries to steal one of the riderless horses that passes by. As he grabbed at its bridle and attempted to mount it, however, he was seized about the neck and the face by 2 of the knights, who promised to take him with them as punishment for his attempted theft. Suddenly, another knight rides to the rescue. While Walchelin doesn't recognise this knight, it's his brother, Ralph the Fair, who is being punished for his warlike ways and his delight in battle. After much prompting and much back and forth, Walchelin eventually recognises his brother, who then warns the young priest about his own sinful life and cautions him that unless he changes his ways, he too will join the procession of the damned. Once Ralph left him and Walchelin was safe, he hurried to the house of the Archbishop of Lisieux. Unfortunately, Walchelin was left physically scarred by the knights that seized him, and this would go on to serve as proof of his encounter. Medieval stories like this one contain a number of messages, both on the surface and hidden below it, for their intended audiences. And we can unpack these messages with some in-depth research and some reading.